It's America Week, so join us in the most diverse country on earth, from casinos to the extremes of Mother Nature, all done up in the USA.
Ready to go?
Ready when you are. I'm always ready.
Oh, see, easy rider. Oh, see what you have done.
When the legendary Elvis Presley died in 1977, millions of fans across the globe were grief-stricken. The king of rock and roll had been taken away at the young age of 42. But his memory and legacy live on in Memphis, Tennessee, at a place called Graceland. In the spring of 1957, at the age of 22, Elvis Aaron Presley bought the home of his dreams in the South Memphis suburb of Whitehaven.
Well, since my baby left me, well, I found a new place to dwell.
For the superstar who would help shake, rattle and roll and new music into the American mainstream, the king of rock and roll needed a castle. His was a place called Graceland.
In the beginning, a lot of the move to Graceland was for privacy. Elvis was the biggest star in the world. So this was his place away from the fame that he loved. But this was the quiet part. This was the home. This was the family and friends.
But for the rest of the world, the house at 3764 Elvis Presley Boulevard would become a pop culture icon, linked forever to one of the most famous entertainers of all time. Graceland opened to the public in the summer of 1982, and it's been a hit ever since. But running Elvis Presley's estate is no easy task.
It required a remarkable contingent of employees right from the beginning to open Graceland. We probably had 200 employees right when we started. We now have between 450 and 500 employees.
At the heart of Graceland's staff is a team of archivists that work off-site in a special warehouse where thousands of Elvis's personal effects are housed, catalogued and preserved. Most of these items have never been seen by the public. Many will eventually spend time in the ever-changing displays and exhibits at Graceland.
We just love displaying any clothing that we can because it really gives people a sense of Elvis when he wasn't on stage, because you notice that his clothing when he's off stage is almost as flamboyant and as expressive of his personality as his stage clothing was.
Today, Graceland is one of the most recognizable private homes in the world.
23% of the annual visitors to Graceland are from outside the United States. The visitorship to Graceland is getting more diverse, it's getting younger, and it's truly exciting because of all of the possibilities it awakens for the future.
But to fully understand the significance of Graceland, you have to travel 100 kilometers south to where it all began. Elvis was born in 1935 in Tupelo, Mississippi, to Vernon and Gladys Presley. They lived in a two-room shotgun house just outside of town. In 1948, when Elvis was 13 years old, Vernon packed up the car and moved the family to Memphis, Tennessee. Not long after they arrived, Vernon was making enough money to qualify for an apartment in a public housing complex. Jerry Schilling was a childhood friend of Presley's and later was one of his most trusted employees and confidants.
You know, when you move from a school at that 11, 12-year-old age, you go into a whole different environment and you're kind of the weird kid. And then if if the family is somewhat poverty-stricken family, that makes you even more weird. And I think it was a rough adjustment for him.
But Elvis did adjust to his new surroundings and graduated from Humes High School in 1953. That summer, he stopped by Memphis Recording Service, home of the Sun Records label in downtown Memphis. There he paid $4 to record 2 songs. One was called My Happiness, and the other was That's When Your Heartaches Begin.
Sam Phillips, the owner of the studio and the Sun record label, heard it and was completely unimpressed Fortunately for Elvis, Sam's secretary, Marianne Keisker, had seen and met Elvis, got the charm, the good looks, the whole package. She continued to push Elvis towards Sam. And so in the summer of '54, Sam brought Elvis in to record, and that's the night they recorded That's All Right, which I guess you could point at as the big bang of the rock and roll revolution.
By the spring of 1957, Elvis Presley had become an international superstar. His records were now selling worldwide, bringing unimaginable fortune and fame. Now all he needed was a home. Elvis had just returned from a trip to California when his parents told him they'd found a house they wanted to show him. The home was built in 1939 by Dr. Thomas Moore and his wife. The estate it sat on had been named after Mrs. Moore's great-aunt, Grace, and was called Graceland. It was everything he wanted: spacious, grand, quiet, set back from the street with a long winding driveway and plenty of land. Elvis loved dramatic entrances, and cruising up the driveway certainly provided him with one. The home was built in a Georgian style and featured 18 rooms and 4 Corinthian columns. After seeing Graceland for the first time, Elvis knew he would buy it. He invited high school classmate and lifelong friend George Klein out to see the house.
Graceland was the only thing out here. It was like out in the country, so to speak. And there was no houses, no nothing out here. And all of this, almost 14 acres. And he liked that. And he liked the fact that it set up on a hill, looked like a southern mansion. And he just really thought it was a cool-looking house, which it was and still is.
The Presleys bought the new home the following week. The purchase price was $102,500. Almost immediately, Graceland became a sanctuary for Elvis, a place to escape the mad rush of fans and press. But more than anything, it was home. In a famous interview conducted at Graceland in 1960, after returning from US military service, Elvis's feelings about his home were clear.
No, sir, I have no plans for leaving Memphis.
You're going to keep Graceland?
I'm going to keep Graceland as long as I possibly can.
On the morning of the 16th of August, 1977, Elvis passed away in the upstairs master suite at Graceland. He was 42. Soon after the media announced Presley's death, throngs of mourning fans began to line up outside the front gates. In addition to their mourning, there were other matters for Presley's family to deal with, namely what would become of his beloved Graceland.
Priscilla had a very special and unique interest in the future sole beneficiary, Lisa. She was her mother.
Jack Soden had been a business associate of Priscilla Presley's for several years. She and the other estate executors liked his style, so they sat down and launched a plan for Graceland's future.
And it was Priscilla, most of all, that really dug her heels in, said, you know, that Graceland can't be sold and the artifacts can't be sold. They have to be kept together. I don't want Lisa to grow up and come to me and say, I wish I had my father's things and the house I grew up in back.
The biggest challenge for the team was the mounting debt. The estate had very little liquid assets in the bank. If Graceland was to open to the public, it would need considerable capital investment.
As they say, you can't take it with you, and Elvis didn't. He spent money as quickly as he made it. And so there really wasn't a lot of invested capital available to preserve Graceland any other way. The estate was down to about the last $500,000 in cash and liquid assets, and we used every bit of it.
Soden assembled a staff to open Graceland and conduct the tour operations. Rooms were prepared and exhibits of Presley's life, career and personal effects were assembled. Even now, decades later, the research efforts continue.
You just simply never knew what you were going to find next. I mean, it was box after cardboard box of things that were packed through their life, as well as opening a drawer, and just, it was a new discovery every day.
On the 7th of June 1982, after just 6 months of preparation, Graceland officially opened to the public. Elvis's aunt, Delta, who still lived there, joined Soden for the ribbon-cutting ceremony.
The most people we could give a tour to in a day was 3,024. I'll never forget that number because that's what we did the first day and the next day and the next day and every day that summer. And we knew that Graceland was indeed going to take care of itself.
In just 38 days, the initial investment required to open Graceland to the public had been recouped. The gamble had paid off. But more work was on the horizon. When Elvis died, he left behind an impressive collection of motorcars, bikes, and other expensive toys. It wasn't uncommon at Graceland to see a golf cart or snowmobile zooming past. In 1989, Elvis Presley Enterprises moved these items from Graceland's carport to a new facility across the street from the home. But Presley's father had sold 2 items after his death. These were the private airplanes Elvis had owned. Recovering them became a priority.
And getting some of these key things back was a real challenge. But we were able to get the plane back, first the Lisa Marie, and then about a year later the Jetstar. But the Lisa Marie was the plane we really wanted because it had such an extraordinary story and was so unique. You know, you couldn't find anybody that wasn't fascinated with the notion of the opportunity to go inside this plane that had been turned into this flying apartment. So we knew it would be a hit.
Profits from ticket sales, merchandising, and licensing allowed the construction of a visitors' center plaza, complete with restaurants, gift shops, a museum, and other attractions. The entire property dedicated to giving visitors the ultimate Elvis experience. Amazingly, the Graceland mansion and its grounds appear exactly as they were when Elvis Presley was alive. The front wall at Graceland is one of the most photographed in the world. Made of brick and stone, Elvis had it built when he bought Graceland in 1957. Almost immediately, fans began to write messages to Elvis. This was the kind of tradition that had to be preserved. Over 20 years after his death, fans from around the world are still writing notes to Elvis.
People have been writing on the front wall at Graceland ever since Elvis put it in 1957, just before he moved here. There were always messages of some kind. Of course, after he died, the messages, the nature of them changed. It was more in memoriam, of course. In a perfect world, there wouldn't be writing on the wall, but it is something that we know has always gone on and always will, and we embrace that fact and what it means to the people who do it.
Today, visitors are shuffled across Elvis Presley Boulevard, through the gates and up the gentle drive to Graceland. This is where the Elvis experience begins. The king of rock and roll himself greets the wide-eyed guests as they start the audio tour tape.
You're about to hear the story of Elvis's life and phenomenal career. He'll tell you some of the story himself in his own words.
Hi, this is Elvis Presley. The happiest times I've ever had, I've been with my family. And in fact, I can't wait to get home.
Once inside the mansion, a crystal chandelier illuminates a staircase to the upper floors of Graceland. To one side is the living room, which was always one of the liveliest rooms at Graceland. Here, friends and family would gather on a 4.5-meter custom-made sofa. The unique stained glass peacocks were designed by a local Memphis firm and added when Elvis redecorated in the mid-1970s.
He added the peacocks just as a decorative piece to go with the decor. Elvis always liked stained glass. It goes back to his interest in spirituality that he developed in the mid-60s. And so throughout Graceland you will find a great deal of stained glass from that period.
The music room was one of Elvis's favorite rooms at Graceland. Here, Elvis would sit at the piano entertaining friends well into the night, or just playing for his own pleasure.
Well, the most special performance I was ever at. Elvis is sitting there. I'd never seen him play the piano. And he was sitting there singing "You'll Never Walk Alone" at the top of his voice. It was so powerful, it scared me because I thought, man, I've just interrupted some great moment. And he knew it did. And while he was singing, "You'll never," he just kind of winked like it's okay. And I think that was the greatest command performance anyone could ever have.
The dining room across the hallway was the setting for many meals together with family and friends. Elvis and his guests enjoyed homemade Southern cooking, but dinner was rarely served before 9 p.m., and holidays were extra special.
Christmas time, on Christmas Eve, we would all gather around the dining room table, and we would give our gifts to Elvis, and he would give his gift to us. Then I'll never forget when Lisa was born, after she could understand what Santa Claus was about, Mr. Presley, Elvis's father, Vernon, would come down these steps and walk right over there dressed up as Santa Claus. And it really was a nice time. It was one of the most happiest times I'd ever seen Elvis, was Christmas Eve at that dining room table.
This is perhaps the most famous room at Graceland. Added in the mid-1960s and used as a den, the room was a favourite gathering spot for friends or associates waiting to see Elvis. It was dubbed the Jungle Room because of its exotic furnishings, which included a custom waterfall and lime green shag carpeting, both on the floor and the ceiling.
There was this period, though, in the, I guess, mid-early 70s, where Elvis just was, wanting to change things up. It was the mood he was in or whatever. And it was during, I believe, Christmas time, and Vernon Presley came back. We were here and said, "Man, Elvis, I just saw the ugliest furniture I've ever seen." So Elvis had to go see it, and that's the furniture that's in there. He bought it all. So, but, we never called it the Jungle Room, actually, I think we kind of thought it was more Hawaiian or something, And Elvis loved Hawaii. That was the only place he really went on vacation.
Presley's parents, Vernon and Gladys, also lived at Graceland. Elvis chose the downstairs bedroom suite for his parents and had it furnished with velvet drapes and upholstery. Added to the visitors' tour in 1998, the bedroom has been restored with its original 1950s decor, including a hand-tinted photograph of Elvis taken by William Spear, a local photographer. It was his parents' favourite. While the ground floor at Graceland had a more formal atmosphere, the basement level was definitely for more upbeat gatherings, and the TV room was the site of many. Elvis had it designed with bold colours and mounted 3 television sets into the wall, and when they wanted music, Elvis played records on a built-in jukebox with speakers wired throughout the home. For more competitive fun, the adjoining billiard room, draped in over 250 square metres of fabric, provided lots of action. Elvis was in his element here, often challenging his friends to a late-night game. The tear in the table's felt is the result of someone's unsuccessful trick shot. But it wasn't all play at Graceland. Taking care of the estate was a full-time job, and Elvis's father Vernon did much of it in this small office. If the sign on the door is anything to go by, he took his job very seriously. Vernon handled Elvis's private business affairs here, including hiring staff, payroll, and daily household management. He was known to be thrifty with money, so he used the same furniture in the office for over 20 years.
Vernon's office is one of the most unique, I think, rooms here at Graceland, in that it was completely preserved as it was essentially the day, if not the day Elvis died, the day Vernon died. And it was completely locked down. But the locked file cabinets contained a wealth of information about Elvis's life on the personal side as well as the business side. Contracts to records to fan mail to news reviews to checks. Every check they ever wrote in their life is in that office. So it's a very special place as far as discovering the history of Elvis Presley because all the information is there.
The sheer number of items Elvis left behind is staggering, and a team of 7 archivists works full-time to preserve and catalogue these pieces of rock and roll history. The work takes place in a warehouse somewhere in the city of Memphis. It's an enormous structure, packed floor to ceiling with Elvis's personal effects that aren't currently on display at Graceland. Everything from furniture to saddles, guitar cases and scrapbooks, a virtual Elvis time capsule. All of it in a space larger than Graceland itself. Each item here is cleaned, checked and entered into an archive database. Some of the artifacts are regularly booked out to display at Graceland or loaned to museums around the world.
This is Elvis's black leather suit. He wore it during the 1968 comeback special. It's one of our key pieces that we have on display, so it's been on display for a while, but we're getting ready to take it to London to be on display in a museum there, and I'm doing a condition report.
Some of the artifacts in the warehouse need special attention, like spraying a neutralizing agent on old scrapbooks to reduce the acidity in the paper, or repairing a lamp that once hung in the dining room at Graceland. Every artifact is given special attention because every item tells a story.
One of the most interesting artifacts that we have in the warehouse is this tour trunk, which contains the scarves that Elvis would give during his concert. For each concert, he was very famous for giving these scarves out. This tag identifies it as that, and this was on the trunk. And there's also written here, one of the stage hands had written "Next Show" for the scarves. And the ironic and sad thing about this was, obviously, there was no next show.
But not all of the items found in the warehouse were purchased by Elvis. In a back room, many gifts sent to Elvis during his life and tributes sent to Graceland after his death are catalogued and also entered into the database. Each one gets the same special attention as the other artifacts in the warehouse.
This is Elvis in his football uniform. He was a football fanatic. Portrait of Elvis's mother, Gladys. Drawing of Elvis and his daughter, Lisa. This is obviously Flamingo Elvis. And it's Glitter Elvis, and we have the young Elvis and the 70s Elvis.
But the truly priceless artifacts from Elvis's life, perhaps some of the most important mementos in rock and roll history, are housed in a specially designed building on the Graceland complex. To the casual observer, the artifact building is unassuming, but far from ordinary.
It's earthquake-proof, it's tornado-proof. We've got flood drains in here. We've got fire suppression system and also alarm system. And it's temperature and humidity controlled. We've got most of his wardrobe cataloged, over 45,000 photographs cataloged, and we are working on probably over 1 million documents in the paper collection.
Carrie Stetler heads up the preservation efforts inside the artifact building. With a degree in archaeology, she was hired by the Graceland estate to help preserve a different sort of artifact site.
I studied archaeology, and of course that's taking an artifact and making it tell you a story. And luckily in this collection we can make those artifacts do that because we have the checks where Elvis maybe purchased the costume, we have the photographs where he wore it, the receipt. You know, a lot of times we have the original boxes that things came in, but many of the clothing that Elvis had was made out of new fabrics, polyester, rayon, dacron, and we're having to look at how their survival life is through time.
In addition to stage costumes, personal wardrobe and accessories, and vast document archives, the artifact building also holds many of Elvis's musical instruments, personal hobby items, and Lisa Marie's baby clothes. Much of the collection here has never been seen by the public.
We keep all sorts of artifacts here, and this is actually what you would call a very early cellular phone. Elvis carried this phone, it's a mobile phone, with him in the briefcase, and it still has the handwritten note with the instructions on how to use it. When we do display this, we have to watch on the dirt accumulating in the buttons and just the varnish here. This is a gun, one of Elvis's personals, and we're about to loan this to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And we also keep these. We have them cleaned and maintained.
You'd think Carrie's main satisfaction would come from knowing she's helping to preserve one of the most important collections in rock and roll history. But the rewards for her job come from another source.
The enjoyment of the fans. They really, really do enjoy getting to see his personal house, and it's an extra special bonus when you get to see all his clothing and his personal hobby items, and to see the research come to fruition in an exhibit for the public to see and to share this great collection.
On the south side of the Graceland mansion is Elvis Presley's trophy room. Originally constructed in the mid-1960s as a recreation room, it was later used to showcase his gold records and other awards. The collection documents his 23-year musical and film career, featuring original movie posters, rows and rows of gold and platinum records, and his Grammy Awards. Even the gold army suit he wore in the late 1950s, arguably the most famous outfit in rock and roll history. Another exhibit space at Graceland is the squash court. Elvis had the structure built in the 70s when he became interested in the sport. To share more artifacts with the public, the court area has been transformed into an exhibit space for even more awards. His legendary jumpsuits, beaded, studded and embroidered, are also on display here, including the famous cape Elvis threw to an audience member at the end of his Aloha from Hawaii concert.
The challenges are that we have more artifacts than we can exhibit. So extracting what we can use and cannot use always becomes the most difficult. Additionally, there's the archival care. Even though they're young costumes, because they're on display, 8 to 12 hours a day, every day of the year, you have to measure how much light is hitting it per year, as well as keeping the constant humidity and temperature.
Just outside the court area, the adjoining lounge remains as it was when a poignant moment occurred. On the 16th of August 1977, Elvis had just finished a light-hearted game of squash with friends and sat down to the piano to play and sing. Two of the songs were Unchained Melody and Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain. He then retired to his master bedroom suite, where he died several hours later. Some of the newest exhibits on the public tour offer a glimpse of many things that until recently have been unavailable for viewing.
Okay. We still have to find a pin for that area.
I think there's one in the artifact building,
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
The area, located just off the northeast corner of the house, was a garage that Presley had converted into an apartment for use by family and friends. Today, it houses exhibits. Other displays at Graceland focus on Presley's career and public persona. Here, more personal items from his private life are now on display, all gleaned from areas never before seen by the public. The artifacts warehouse, archive building, and the upstairs quarters at Graceland.
What we have here is a representation of Graceland kind of through the years. We have a living room section representing it in the 1960s, early 1960s, I'd say. This section over here, which is called the dressing room section, so we have some of his clothes, and we also have a bed that used to be in the room that was later used as a dressing room. The special thing about all of this is that it's never been seen by the public before. So you have a sort of a glimpse of what the public never sees upstairs. So it's just very, very neat, and we're hoping that people will be very excited about it. It's been sort of the same tour for so long, and this is an area that's been sort of closed off to them for all these years, and they, A, get to go through a new door, and B, get to see all of the stuff that we've had in storage and haven't been able to show them.
Since the opening of Graceland in 1982, Elvis Presley Enterprises has expanded the exhibits that tell the story of the king of rock and roll, and has grown from a handful of employees to 500 full-time staff. Running Graceland is a round-the-clock job. While the focal point of Graceland is the home and the various rooms inside, the surrounding 6 hectares of the estate are equally important to the complete Elvis experience. During Elvis's life at Graceland, friends and family enjoyed the areas outside as much as the home itself. A young Jimmy Gamble used to play in the grounds at Graceland.
My grandfather was Elvis's father's brother, and my grandmother's Elvis's mother's sister. And so brothers married sisters, so I'm second cousin.
Over 30 years later, Jimmy Gamble is still riding golf carts on the lawn. He works for Graceland as the supervisor for landscaping and maintenance.
On daily operations, first thing we do, we come in first thing in the morning. They'll get the blowers out and make sure the pathways for the tours are clean. Go down to the pool, make sure it's clean, gravesite, rearrange the flowers, wipe the graves off.
The graves are located on the south end of the mansion in the meditation garden. Elvis commissioned its design in the mid-60s. He wanted wrought iron and benches for reading, and a ring of white columns with a fountain of water jets in the center. Its spiritual atmosphere was a quiet place for reflection, and when Elvis died, this was the place his father Vernon chose to lay him to rest. Today, there are 4 graves placed along a small walkway, and in keeping with the original design. This is the resting place for Elvis, his mother and father, Gladys and Vernon, and grandmother, Minnie May. There's no other spot at Graceland that evokes such emotion. The graves are constantly maintained by Jimmy Gamble's team of gardeners.
On the gravesite, we have all different types of items that are left, along with the flowers, teddy bears, guitars, pictures people leave behind, and the teddy bears, they are kept and give to like a children's home.
Along with maintaining the grave sites at the meditation garden, the staff also take care of watering, planting, trimming, and making sure Graceland's grounds are in tip-top shape.
I take pride in taking care of the place. I really enjoy it, and since growing up here, I like to keep everything, you know, as close to when Elvis was alive, and you know, seeing the things that I've seen. And I like, you know, for our guests to be able to kind of have a similar experience and see kind of how it was when he was around.
When Elvis was around, so were horses, and they're still around today. The original barn used while Elvis lived at Graceland is still used to house and take care of several horses. Aileen Alexander works as stable master at Graceland. She started working here the year it opened to the public.
Can you count? Show them you can count. How old are you? Come on. 1, 2, 3.
Aileen and 2 employees oversee all the horses at Graceland, making sure they remain healthy and happy, just the way Elvis did.
There was a horse for everybody. And of course, Elvis had his favorite named Rising Sun. It's a golden Palomino quarter horse. Absolutely a beautiful horse.
Rising Sun died in 1986. The staff at Graceland, ever mindful of the details, buried him somewhere on the grounds, with his head facing east towards the rising sun. When Graceland opened in 1982, only 5 horses from Elvis's stable were still alive, and all were getting on in years. But the staff made plans to ensure there would always be horses at Graceland.
Priscilla and I talked about what should come next, and Jack Soden, our CEO, we talked about what should come next and decided that Graceland was a wonderful place for horses that just actually needed a home, that would have otherwise been put down due to neglect or abuse or no longer wanted. And we take very good care of them, and we hope they're going to live a long time in spite of their handicap.
Other than the horses, no one roams the grounds at Graceland more than Carl Moore, property manager. His team looks after the property and the well-being of Graceland's guests and staff, and assists with the general day-to-day operations.
We have not changed up a great deal. Elvis believed in a lot of cameras. We do too. We've gone a little bit more electronic as far as alarms, but basically we're still working even with some of the equipment that he had when he was alive. Probably guessed I would probably have between 75 and 100 cameras. We're loaded up with them. We have them in each room of the mansion. We have them in, even down at our corporate office. We have them in all our gift shops. We have them in a lot of different areas.
306, go ahead. Check, 317 is en route. Give him a few minutes.
Watching over people and property is only one element to the daily operations at Graceland. With an average gate of over 600,000 visitors annually, it's a team effort involving ticket cashiers, line attendants, shuttle bus drivers, tour guides, and many others, all with one goal in mind: to provide each visitor with the ultimate Elvis experience.
We look around the world and we see how utterly powerful and self-generating the interest in Elvis Presley is, the Elvis Presley phenomenon. And so I always kind of say genuinely that our mission statement is, don't screw it up.
Today, the Elvis experience is big business. His music continues to be played throughout the world, and his legend as a superstar is more alive than ever. From fan clubs to licensing and merchandising, the image of the king is everywhere. And it's down to how Elvis promoted himself when he was alive. Elvis Presley recognized the value of a performer's image and the business potential it held. He created Elvis Presley Enterprises early in his career, and the modern version of that organization continues to work today to preserve and protect not only the man's Graceland home, but also the superstar's public image. Elvis's name is trademarked, and the goal is to uphold strict standards for officially licensed merchandise. Danny Hiltonbrand is in charge of the merchandising efforts for products available at Graceland's gift shops, online and retail outlets. While collectibles and other memorabilia are the tangible items fans return home with, Hiltonbrand and his team feel they offer visitors something more.
In the stores, what our focus is basically is to sell memories. They're caught up in the moment, and it's almost like a concert in it. People are excited by what they've just seen. They want to be able to take home a tangible memory of that experience. I like to tell people that we sell everything from 39-cent postcards to $12,000 Elvis World for jukeboxes and everything in between.
All the merchandise is housed at a huge Tennessee warehouse. From here, Elvis Presley products are distributed across the United States and the world. And Elvis Presley Enterprises is extending its activities in Memphis beyond the gates at Graceland. Just down the street, they're into the hotel business. Complete with an Elvis-inspired decor, the Heartbreak Hotel conveys a flashy style, much like Presley's own. The outdated and well-worn hotel was transformed over the course of 2 years. It's a new place to dwell, Heartbreak Hotel.
I think at first it was going to be just a very basic renovation, but we got started cooking with ideas. The governing idea was that this is, let's pretend this is Elvis's hotel. He's buying this, he's renovating this for the people who come to visit Graceland. It's with Elvis's personal style in mind and the different eras that he represents.
The creative minds at Elvis Presley Enterprises designed 4 unique suites at the new Heartbreak Hotel, each one with its own theme and design. The Hollywood suite represents a career in motion pictures and features a private screening theatre where you can watch your favourite Elvis movies until all hours of the night. The Golden Platinum Suite is 60s chic, with mirrored ceilings and symbols only fitting to the accomplishments Elvis reached in the recording industry. The Burning Love Suite was designed with honeymooners in mind, with rich draperies and furnishings, and lots of red and gold. But the most popular of all is the Graceland Suite.
I've heard that they were making the suites, but I was a little skeptical. I didn't think they could get the feel of Graceland like they've gotten in the suite. It's so authentic. Everything is very, very nice. I got chills the first time I saw it. I knew I had to rent it. Had to have it. I've had some of the other fans ring the doorbell, want to see the room, and I don't mind because I'm a fan too, and I know how I would feel and how bad I wanted to see it before I got to see it the first time. So I've let a lot of people come through and look at the room.
But Elvis Presley Enterprises' Memphis activities go beyond Graceland's boundaries to the heart of Beale Street in downtown Memphis. Elvis Presley's Memphis is a new restaurant, housed in what was Lansky Brothers Clothing, the store that fitted Elvis with many of his famous clothes. The staff at Graceland wanted to create a restaurant that celebrates Elvis's style and the city he loved. You can play a game of 8-ball on the pool table that Elvis and the Beatles once played on, or sample some of Presley's favourite foods. The menu offers contemporary American cuisine, as well as typical Memphis fare, including the famous peanut butter and banana sandwich.
So just think of it as a grilled cheese. And this is the fried peanut butter banana sandwich, the finished product, the famous sandwich that Elvis loved.
Elvis Presley Enterprises is reaching even further, preserving and protecting the image of Elvis worldwide. But none of the successes would be possible without the most devoted fans in the world.
And as soon as we receive the fan club profile back and get you on the computer, we will send you another packet.
Patsy Anderson is one person who knows firsthand how big Elvis is worldwide. She's been the fan relations manager since 1985.
We have about 500 Elvis Presley fan clubs around the world, and that includes Istanbul, Chile, Israel, Russia, Sri Lanka, Malaysia.
The maps that Patsy keeps across from her desk are dotted with hundreds of pushpins. It's her way of keeping track of the location and size of every fan club worldwide. Many of those fan clubs come to Elvis Week every year on the anniversary of Elvis's death. The week of the 16th of August is a special time at Graceland. Thousands of fans from around the world descend on Memphis to celebrate the life of Elvis Aaron Presley. Many have made the journey every year since his death in 1977.
This will be our 12th Elvis Week. We try to come 2 or 3 times a year, but there is nothing like being here for Elvis Week. We have one big Elvis reunion.
Elvis Week is a festive celebration throughout the city of Memphis. Fans from all over the world enjoy concerts, movie premieres, street parties. There are special appearances by some of Elvis's associates and friends, and even a few impromptu social gatherings. But the biggest event of the week is the Candlelight Vigil. The vigil had its unofficial start on the first anniversary of Elvis's death, when a handful of fans gathered at the front gates of Graceland. They sang Elvis songs and lit candles in a quiet reverence. The next year, more people came, and the next, even more.
There was always this camaraderie amongst the fans who gathered at the front gates. Then 1982 comes. Graceland opens in June, and August is approaching, and one of the fan leaders suggested to Jack Soden that we open the gates and allow the fans to walk up the driveway to the gravesite area and back down. Wouldn't that be wonderful? And Jack said, yeah, that's a good idea.
The Candlelight Vigil begins in earnest at the gravesite in the meditation garden. A single candle is lit from the eternal flame at Elvis's grave, and then passed on to the torchbearers who bring the flame down to the front gate. As the night progresses, fans wait patiently in line to walk up the hill and pay their respects, and to celebrate the life of the king of rock and roll.
It's just a really moving moment. He was the best, and that's why all the way from Ireland, we came out from New York and everything. This is really cool.
I think parents also just, the way they feel about him, they pass it on to their kids. It's more than just yeah, listen to this music. This was the man, this is what he did. It's an image thing. He was cool, and he's cool forever, so it's kind of,
The Candlelight Vigil lasts well into the night, as thousands of fans pass by Elvis's grave, leaving personal tributes behind. Toward the end of the ceremony, flowers, photographs, and other personal mementos are often stacked knee-deep on the gravesite. By the small hours, the last of the fans make their way up the driveway to the gravesite and back down to the gates. Dawn will break in just a few hours. The groundsmen start work at 7 a.m. and tidy up the gravesite, ready for the day. By mid-morning, Graceland is buzzing with life. The security guards report in and start making their rounds. The horses are being fed and led out to pasture. The driveway and grounds are cleaned, and the fans once again tour the mansion on this special day at Graceland. Many of the fans will be planning their return trips for next year.
It will always be the kind of experience that's about music, that's about being touched, that's about a smile on your face at a guy whose music and whose charisma could move people so powerfully. And a half a century from now, Graceland will be one of the best preserved examples of the 60s and 70s on the face of the planet, because none of it will have been recreated or reconstituted. I think people will be coming to visit this house 20 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now.
Over 20 years after Elvis's death, his popularity continues to soar and attract new generations and a diverse fan base. Graceland grows along with it, and with the estate's ongoing efforts, Elvis Presley's beloved home will indeed be something to see well into the future.